Welcome to Coleman Report Live. I'm Bob Coleman, and we're talking Main Street and the small business lenders who help it grow. Katie Watucky, Katie Roach. I'm so sorry, Katie. Is it Mary Jo?
Thing the other day at a store, somebody asked my last name, and I got halfway through saying Watucky.
All right, let's start over. Katie Roach, our editor, undisclosed location, Seattle. Joseph Coleman's going to join us on Wednesdays. Wednesdays are going to be webinar Wednesdays, and we do that. I guess Lance feels he gets the time off, right, Joseph?
That's right. Yeah, he puts in his time. I think he does a good job on Wednesdays.
No. Yeah. Well, he's not here to defend himself, so we can razz him. Hey, we got a bunch of news. Let's go to it. Looks like we get some new people here. Oh, go back one, Joseph. Show, download those certificates. They are good for training. They satisfy the auditors what you're doing for training for both your regulators, SBA, your internal CPA firm, et cetera, et cetera. Download those. Let's go to the questions. And for those of you who are following the news, you know why I'm asking this question. Have you reported PPP loan fraud to the Inspector General? Katie, what do you think the answer is going to be?
Well, I think there might be a few, but I don't think we have the kind of audience that probably is going to need to do that.
There you go. I would have guessed a little bit higher. The takeaway for me on this is, yeah, there's fraud out there, but I'm glad to see. Let's put this in perspective, and we certainly understand the memo that came out on JP Morgan Chase, and we'll be following that. But this all needs to be put into context. This is such a small amount compared to the good that's being done for Main Street. Sometimes we forget that fact. According to Goldman Sachs, what percentage of small businesses think they will survive the pandemic? And I guess the first question is, Katie, I always, after 9/11, we were able to call it 9/11 right away. And then the recession, the Great Recession, took a while to be in our culture or vocabulary. Is this just going to be called the pandemic? Do we have a better term yet?
I've heard everything from COVID to there's some fun, funky names out there for it as well, but I haven't really heard anything settling in yet. So we'll see.
We'll call it the pandemic. The answer is 55%, which is
65.
Scary.
65, yeah.
Oh, it is 65. Okay.
Yeah, I have this graph right here. I included in the handouts as well.
Explain the graph.
Yeah, this is a graph from April. As you see, during the stimulus PPP period, it went up, and then now it's the yeses are starting to creep back down to 65%, and the uncertainty is increasing from July until now. So there's some cool stats in there. It's take a look at it, but the numbers are getting somewhat worrisome.
Yeah, and this is why Congress, and Congress knows they need to act. This is not something that is new to them, that this is a crisis that all of a sudden they're going, hey, it's what's going on. We've known about this. We've known about this for months. We understand that we need to help Main Street. There's a lot of people hurting, a lot of people going paycheck to paycheck, and when you lose your job, that is problematic. So we're gonna, Katie, I guess you're gonna follow up on this. We'll write about this further.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah, 32% of loan recipients have already been forced to lay off employees or cut wages. That is, this. We don't. We're straddling a fine line, gang. We don't want to fearmonger, but we want to talk reality, right, Katie?
Correct.
You need to make sure you're considering those things when you're underwriting too. So I think it's important to really have a good perspective of what's going on Main Street and how small businesses are feeling about this.
Yeah, and that's our job. I mean, we try to bring out important facts. Look, our editorial philosophy is we're going to report on things you don't get in the Wall Street Journal, New York Times. We're very specifics, and I know that's why we get a lot of traction, a lot of people turning in. We're covering issues that affect your job, your livelihood, your client's livelihood, your community. I mean, this is important stuff.
Yeah, I have one last comment on this. It's fascinating. You always say that the businesses that did survive the recession got a lot smarter. And so this 95% stat that we're able to get approved, it seems like they're, the small businesses in America today are very sophisticated. And
Well, they have to be Renaissance people. They have to know accounting. They have to manage cash flow, which is number one. And then they have to be marketers. They have to adapt to circumstances that no one predicted 6 months ago. So, in fact, we're all in the same boat. Hey, the Main Street Lending Program, we haven't been following too much. This is funded directly by the Fed. These are the larger loans. I believe, Katie, we can go up to 5,000 employees. The average loan, $10 million. Are my numbers right on that?
That sounds right. It's been a while since I've looked at the program. I know they did make some changes at one point.
And how much do you think has been funded? Very good. 1.1 billion, which if you put that into context, we had a $630 billion fund. We still have money left over. So I'm hoping this will be tweaked to make it more lender-friendly, be borrower-friendly. There are a number of requirements I'd like to see. I think we would like to see that streamlined. I have no issue with lending stimulus funds to a larger company because a job's a job. I don't care if you're working for a small mom and pop Italian restaurant or you're working for a rural hospital who's employing a couple thousand people. Your job's a job. So especially, well, since I mentioned the rural's important. They have a whole another set of issues. Okay, the reason why people turn in, Katie, what's going on the Hill?
So we have a little more information on the skinny bill that was introduced yesterday, or at least the new verbiage was introduced yesterday. The Senate is expected to vote on this Thursday, and this new bill allows for second draw loans for businesses with a 35% drop in revenue or more. It also reduces the amount a borrower can receive from $10 million to $2 million. And it gives businesses more flexibility on how they can spend the money. I know earlier versions of it were saying something about businesses affected by some of the rioting and things like that. I'm sure that's still in there. What it doesn't have is they did change the amount of the drop for revenue from 50% to 35%, which is actually a lot of support right now. So I'm glad they saw some of that. It also doesn't have an additional check for regular stimulus checks. Those have been removed from it. So we'll see. It doesn't have a lot of support right now with the Democrats, and there are even a few Republicans who are saying they're not sure about it. So it might get tweaked before it really gets passed.
Well, a couple questions. I doubt you have the answer because I don't think we have the specifics. But let's go through the list. They're going to vote tomorrow. That's pretty simple. Number two, there's a 35% drop in revenue. What is the comparison? Is it year over year, month to month? How do we calculate that 35%, or how do we document the 35%? Do we know yet?
I believe it's going to be over some kind of covered period. At least that's what earlier versions of it were. I don't know what the covered period is going to be for this specific bill.
I have no issue with the dropping it to $2 billion. I know the larger companies that wanted it, they were sophisticated enough with their consultants and their CPAs to get those loans. And talking to lenders, the last tranche of fundings were for the smaller loans. So I think going from 10 to 2 is fine. I don't have a problem with that. Do we know the last one, Katie? When we talk about more flexibility, do we know what they're talking about?
They did say something before, again, about businesses affected by the rioting and looting. There might also be some in there for any other expenses, such as if you're reopening and you need more cleaning expenses or more security of some sort. Those things may be covered under this new bill.
Do we know how many small businesses have been negatively impacted by the riots?
I have not seen a number specifically for small businesses. I know
Neither
it's
have you?
probably worse in the cities, but I don't know
Well,
how much it's small businesses.
Yeah, I'd sort of like to know how big of a issue that is. Leisha is asking us any news on the recovery loans. Now that's what we're talking about. That's what we're waiting on. Obviously on this list, Katie, we don't have the dollar amount that we think we're going to have for documentation. I mean, we all agreed yesterday was 150, and I think that's still there. But from what you read, are they going to have some sort of documentation, easy adaptation? How's that sound? How's that for mangling my words?
I think we're probably going to see a different bill for that because I think they really want to make sure that that does pass. And this one is being mingled with some of the other issues, and that's what's causing it to really have a little bit of a hang up. But I think we're definitely going to see something for forgiveness coming out in the next couple of weeks.
I do want to talk about this. These are the top lenders as of August 8th. So that's I think that was the last date. So these are current stats. And as you see, JP Morgan is number one. They were in the news yesterday, and a memo went out to employees saying that they think some of their customers engaged in fraud, and they're worried about that some of their employees did. Obviously, that negative press is not conducive, but we will be following up on that. But you can take a look at this. I know SB is focused on that fourth column. They want to see an average loan size of a smaller amount. That's not to criticize any of the larger ones because a job's a job. I'm all for that. But SBA loves to see the smaller allowance to get funded. Cross River Banks out in New Jersey, they've done a great job in terms of funding a lot of loans and a small amount of loans. Now, one of the things that, Joseph, they were talking about was, well, I'll let you talk about the alert, Joseph. Go ahead.
Oh, we just included this. These are the PPP load frauds that came down to really 6 lenders. So that reporting from the industry, I think someone was wise enough to see a trend, and they got the OIG and the FBI involved, and they did their research.
Well, I'm 100% for that, and I'm glad that they are moving quickly. And while we may have some negative press on that, we're also getting the word out that this is not a wise business decision to engage in fraud with a federal government program. Bad things will happen to you.
Yeah, and the Monday morning quarterbacking and the finger pointing is starting to become a little bit more common. And when you get a Rolex or a nice car, I think that just makes it obvious. So, yeah.
I don't know. Michael, if you could solve that buzzing, I'd appreciate it. Berkshire asked any discussion adding to any bill provisions. Again, these are technical things we still don't know. We're still waiting for a lot of these technical issues. Everyone should just sit tight. Hopefully tomorrow answers a lot of questions. Interesting news. On Deck has joined Visa. They've joined together. So you see a lot of these fintech lenders making joint venture agreements. And that's something, it's interesting, especially that a lot of fintechs created or books the wrong term, referred a number of PPP loans to lenders, and they were very instrumental in getting money out to Main Street. Question for both of you. It says, do we need to obtain original documentation for the PPP loans?
I think I'm pushing that to Lance.
Lance not here. My response to you, Wendy, is that whatever the answer is Lance is going to answer that. But I think as long as we have copies, we have it signed, we're okay. I would get whatever documentation you get for a 7A loan you're going to want for a PPP loan. Obviously, an original note we're going to want, but remember, we can take a scanned note under PPP on a temporary basis. But and if you go for e-signatures, you're fine with that. Well, I think we punted that one well.
Right.
I think the system is pretty flexible, so if you have more documentation, that's always better than submitting less documentation.
Yeah, but you can scan stuff in and have initials. Hey, if you want to join today's webinar, it starts in about 45 minutes. Just send an email to joseph@colemanreport.com. We're going to be talking about all the changes in the new SOP, and that's, as I said, that's going to be happening later on today. Tomorrow we got John Riosti, American banker. Joseph, and I know you've been talking to our other sources in Washington. What do you think we're going to be able to report tomorrow?
I think we're going to get a vote sometime tomorrow afternoon, and hopefully it's a yes, and then we'll move on there from getting the agency involved and getting the regs out as soon as possible. Because I think the 65% is on a downward trend, and there's a lot of good folks that need that assistance sooner than later. So
I want to give a shout out to Brightbridge Capital in Tennessee. They're recognized as the top SBA nonprofit lender, providing community advantage 504 lending programs. And shout out to them. It's awarded by the local district office. And Mike Coleman is the president and the CEO of that CDC. So congratulations. And with that, thank you for joining us today for Coleman Report Live and for supporting America's Main Street, one entrepreneur at a time. Thanks a lot.
take care, everyone.